Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Simmons with AIM, and we're here today with our CEO, Matt Greller, and our legislative team, Jenna Nepper, Cable Ritchie, and Chris Bandy. Hi, guys.
Jennifer.
All right. It's week 2 of the legislative session, and I kind of always feel like each session has its own feel, its own tone, and I would describe this one as frantic. Just fast and furious. So Chris, where are we in the process? And do you agree with my assessment?
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. That's definitely an accurate way to describe these past 2 weeks of session. But like you said, we're just wrapping up the second week of the legislative session, meaning we're almost a quarter of the way through this year. Today is actually the last day for Senate bills to be assigned to a committee, or else they're going to die, while the House's deadline was actually on Tuesday, the 11th. And finally, we have committee report deadlines are quickly approaching. We're going to see those within the next 2 weeks.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Well, you've heard us talk already in last week's legislative summary and just in the last few months about the business personal property tax, about how important that is to municipal budgets. Matt, there's kind of a lot going on this week at the State House in terms of BPPT. Do you want to kick that discussion off for us?
Sure. Thanks, Jennifer. Busy week, as you mentioned, with business personal property tax and the various proposals concerning it. I guess we've talked about it a few times, but our coalition is continuing to meet and work on the issue collectively. Association of Counties has been a great partner in this effort and continue to work through the end of session. I do expect this bill will be one of the last, or this issue will be one of the last issues resolved in the session. So I would expect us to be talking about it right up until the bitter end and asking for your help. For those of you that have legislators on Senate Tax and Fiscal or House Ways and Means, we reached out to you pretty aggressively this week. So thank you for reaching out to those legislators. That effort made a difference. I would say that, again, the mantra continues to be the same. The House is moving very quickly on business personal property, and the Senate is taking a slower approach. I met with Senate leadership this week, had some encouraging conversations there, and we'll continue to work that angle as best as we possibly can. This week, I think we will be asking you all to really push the adoption of resolutions by your councils on the issue of business personal property tax, and Jennifer will talk about that more here in just a few minutes. But again, the bills were heard this week, one in the Senate and one in the House. And Campbell, I think we'll take it from here and talk about how those two issues fared on both sides.
Yeah, so like they said, it was a busy week for us. Jen and I got the opportunity to testify in both of the House and the Senate on this issue. Senate went first on Tuesday, and they had 2 bills on business personal property tax that contained a bunch of different ideas on how to deal with it. They just wanted to have a full hearing on all of the ideas that were out there. So we all went and testified on that, and they held all of their personal property tax bills are very likely going to continue that discussion on to the last weeks of that committee for the first half. Whereas on the House side, which was on Wednesday, they have their personal property tax provisions in House Bill 1002. That's the elimination of the depreciation floor for new equipment moving forward. As we discussed last week, there was a lengthy hearing on that Wednesday night, and both counties and we were there to testify against that and raised all the concerns that our members have been raising to us with them. But they are moving very quickly on that bill that also contains all their other state tax cuts, and they passed it out of committee that night after the hearing.
I think one quick thing I'd like to add on the kind of the discussion that came out of House Ways and Means in particular with House Bill 1002, it is certainly an improvement than where the conversation started this summer. I mean, with the replacement, the state credit for existing equipment is a great step in the right direction. But kind of the comments made about the phase out of the 30% floor on new equipment moving forward is concerning. Chairman Brown, who's the author of this bill, continued to reiterate that AV growth over time is enough of a replacement for this phase out. And so I think from our members and from our perspective, we got to show them the numbers and the data why AV growth isn't a true replacement mechanism, because that seemed to resonate with members of the committee. And I think will be something we'll have to deal with as this compromise and work on business personal property tax is negotiated between the Senate and the House. So appreciate that the bill is taking a step in the right direction, but it's still not a full replacement mechanism in that bill.
All right, thanks. Jenna, let's keep rolling with some non-property tax related or non-business personal property tax related issues. Next up, municipal growth. So in the legislature, the last several years, in addition to annexation, which we see all the time, we're seeing additional bills that restrict our planning and zoning abilities. So talk about that sort of package of bills that just keeps coming back, and we're really wrestling with those again this session.
Absolutely. I'll start with as you mentioned, the annexation bill that we've seen each of the last 5 sessions since I've been around AIM. Senate Bill 73 is Senator Boots's bill that was heard in Senate local government the first week of session. They voted it out 6-3 this week, so it will go to the Senate floor. And that's the bill that essentially eliminates the ability for municipalities to initiate annexation and would require voluntary annexations on an ongoing basis. The last few sessions, the House hasn't taken up this issue, which is a positive, but I think this is one where we'll certainly have to get our members engaged in starting with the Senate side. So more to come on that discussion. But then as you referenced, I mean, there are 6 bills this legislative session dealing with eminent domain, one of which passed out of Senate local government this week, Senate Bill 29. There's more info in the legislative summary. It did get better, but there's a House bill being heard next week in House local government that would require commissioner approval of the use of eminent domain outside the corporate boundaries, which is often for utility easements, and is just really problematic. I will say it just seems like with the increase in projects, there's been an increased focus on eminent domain, and I think this is going to be a session-long conversation. So just a heads up there. And then one more bill specific to planning and zoning is House Bill 1064 from Representative Engelman. This was heard in House Judiciary this week. They held it. Essentially what this bill does is gives an association standing for judicial review of local zoning decisions. And what's I think really concerning about this bill is the loose definition of an association. So ultimately, if one constituent is aggrieved and doesn't agree with the local zoning decision, they can essentially form an association with other folks and try to get this zoning decision automatically under judicial review. And so I think this will result in delayed projects, and Representative Jeter, who's on that committee, voiced some of those similar concerns. And so we've met with the bill author, and we'll continue to meet with committee members to share the kind of consequences that this bill could have in terms of overturning local decision and delaying projects and developments from moving forward.
Thanks, Jenna. Another topic we cover a lot that we are sometimes battling a lot in the legislature, changes to the TIF statutes. This year, it seems like there are actually some things we support, some positive movements in that area, and some language we need to watch out for. Campbell, what's going on with TIF?
Yeah, so there are 3 TIF bills that we either heard recently or going to be heard in the next week. I wanted to touch on. The first was heard yesterday in Senate Local Government Committee, and was a change to the housing TIF statute. Right now, if you do a housing TIF, you need to get the approval of the school district that it affects. And this bill removes that requirement. No one's really had trouble working with their school districts who've been implementing the housing TIF. It's relatively new, and those collaborations have been fine, but this just does streamline it and make sure that that process does not hold up your ability to move forward with these projects. That passed out of committee this week. And then next week, they're in Tax and Fiscal Policy Committee, they're hearing Senate Bill 4, which expands the eligible uses of TIF for a whole package of workforce attraction eligible uses for TIF that they've dubbed the talent TIF. And so that'll be heard in Senate Tax and Fiscal Policy Committee next week, and the Appropriations Committee next week. There's a huge economic development bill that makes a lot of changes to how the IDC can use their economic development tools throughout the state. That includes language on what they call an innovation district, an innovation development district, which could potentially have significant impacts on underlying TIF districts if that language moves forward. And so we're continuing to get feedback from our redevelopment community on how that could impact them and what changes would be necessary to make it work. And we're continuing conversations with the bill authors to make sure that anything that passes through that bill isn't harmful to the local economic development efforts you all are engaged in.
All right, thanks, Campbell. Sounds like there's just a lot to watch there. So we'll be talking, I'm sure, over the coming weeks a lot about TIF. Something we haven't really talked about the last couple of weeks that's kind of hanging over everyone's heads, the pandemic. We are still in the middle of a pandemic like we have been for the last couple of years. There's a lot of talk at the State House about that, about vaccines, and there has been in recent months about vaccine mandates and other employer restrictions, allowances. That's also a big conversation at the federal level with the president mandating vaccinations for large employers, or that large employers mandate their employees are vaccinated. Matt, you want to just kind of do a package update on vaccine mandates?
Yep, sure. Thanks, Jennifer. As you alluded to, probably the most important news came out yesterday from the U.S. Supreme Court that issued an opinion and blocked enforcement of the workplace vaccination and testing policy for the large employers, as Jennifer just mentioned. So I know a few weeks ago when the president came out with that order via federal OSHA, that there was a lot of discussion among the 75 or so cities and towns that have more than 100 employees. So the Supreme Court has now weighed in, as we expected, and has blocked the enforcement of that for the time being. So we'll see what happens going forward, but right now we're in a stay provision, and the order is blocked, so there's no need to move forward with any of the testing or vaccination requirements that the president and OSHA have been talking about at the federal level. Back in Indiana, this still continues to be a hot topic. There are numerous proposals in the House that are moving. Again, the House is moving very quickly, that look at vaccination mandates and try to preempt businesses, for the most part, from pursuing those. The Senate seems to be more focused on the governor's and executive powers and trying to look at what happens the next time we're in a situation like this, and curtail some of the authority that the governor has here in the state. So generally speaking, that's where we are on those issues, are dominating media coverage for sure. So I'm sure most people are probably up to speed on where those things stand, but we'll continue to watch and monitor those situations and look for any impacts to our members here in Indiana.
Great, thanks. All right, that wraps it up for week 2 of the legislative session. Just a few housekeeping items for you. Please do not forget to register for the AIM Legislative Dinner. If you haven't received information on that, you can find it at aimindiana.org under the events tab. Also, as Matt mentioned, we are working with several coalition partners, many coalition partners, on the Replace, Don't Erase initiative. You can find information on that at aimindiana.org/BPPT. That's where you can find sample resolutions that we discussed earlier in the update. You can find samples there. And please, if you do pass a resolution, which we encourage you to do, please send us a copy of that once you've passed it, so we can put it on the Replace, Don't Erase website, and we can get some more visibility for that effort. And finally, don't forget, there's a tracking list at the bottom of the email that includes this video. That tracking list will tell you everything that the legislative team is following at the State House this session. We highly encourage you to read that, if not weekly, every couple of weeks, to stay up to speed on the bills that you don't hear about here. We can only cover a few each week, and there are many, many more that impact city and town government. So please take a look at that tracking list periodically and let us know if you have questions or if you want to weigh in on a particular bill. So take care, and we'll see you next week.